I figured while I have Melchior down for maintenance here on the treadmill instead of the carpet, static electricity, kids, I would give you a little tour. That doesn't work. As you can see, it's fairly long. This is standard for rack mount equipment, although I don't have a rack for it. So it juts out quite a bit from that shelf. It isn't quite deep enough to be flush with the front, but that's fine. Foot reveal. It's long, but it's very thin, as you can see. My finger is longer than the width of this thing. It's just wide enough to have bays for 3.5-inch big boy hard drives, and they somehow fit an optical drive in here as well. The bays are actually hot swappable, meaning that you can remove any of these and swap it out with a different disk without having to power the whole thing off. These are what the rails look like. They're fairly standard. Eventually I want to put a cache disk of some sort in here, maybe a terabyte SSD. It's a shame that this thing is so old, or else I'd put an NVMe disk in it, but whatever. This is what it looks like with a hard drive in it. It's WD Red, 3 terabyte. All the drives in these 3 bays are 3 terabytes. One of them is acting as a parity disk. Basically that means that one of the drives in here can fail and I will lose no data, which is good because hard drives are known to fail every so often. But that also means that I lose one of the disks. So there is a total of 9 terabytes of storage in here, but since one of them is parity, I only get these two, which would be 6 terabytes. Which is fine for all of the data that I have to store. Oh, this thing, by the way, just has the serial number and stuff on it. They do that instead of putting it on an ugly sticker, because it looks better. This is the equivalent of opening up the side panel on your desktop PC, although it's a little bit bigger. Goes up to about my thigh, standing up straight. It's actually pretty cool. Has instructions on how to service stuff right on the bottom of the panel, which is great for repairability. All data center equipment is actually very repairable. You would never see like soldered on RAM or CPUs or anything like that in one of these, because it's enterprise equipment. Another thing you'll also see a lot in enterprise equipment is 2 of everything. So, of course, there's 4 hard drive bays, but there's also 2 CPUs and 2 banks of memory. This is a total of 72 gigs of DDR3 ECC memory for all you nerds out there. These are Intel Xeon E5 2420 V2s. The reason that there's 2 is that in early server equipment, they could not get the amount of performance that they wanted in one chip, so they just put in another one. This bank of memory goes to this processor, and this bank of memory goes to this one. There's 2 PCIe slots here. This one is X16, this one is X8. As I said before, I was trying to put my old graphics card in it, but as you can see, it's actually too thick. It does not fit. I need to get a slimmer one, although I don't think I'll actually bother, because I don't run Plex or anything that requires media decoding, so a graphics card would just be kind of useless in here. I really just tried to put it in for the lulz. Guess I could take one of these out. These actually screw in, but the guy that sold it to me did not do that. it's a weird ass connector that goes into the motherboard, but it comes out, it's kind of a riser card. It comes out as just regular X16. So this card actually goes sideways, like that, but it's only single height. So you can't put graphics cards in here. I think it's more meant for like network cards and I guess USB sound cards even. I don't know why I'd put a sound card on a server, but just goes in like that. These are the fans, by the way. So I should have explained that. They're very, very tiny, as you can see, which is why there's a lot of them. There's 6 in total, with 2 dummy ones. So I think, actually no, you can't put 8 in here because there's no ports for them. But the reason they're so small and there's so many of them is of course because of the height restriction and because of the way the airflow works in this style of case. As you can see, there's no fan on the CPUs, and there's just a heatsink. The way that it works is these are very high power fans, and they blow air through the entire thing. So it comes in the front, it is actually guided by this thing through the CPU, through the memory, through your expansion cards and your power supply, and out through the back. These things are very loud. This is why enterprise equipment is very loud, is because of the fans. They're very small and they run at a very, very high RPM. I will cut the video when I put this back. When I boot it up, I will show you how loud they get. Put this thing back on. This shroud is actually required for the system. I don't think it's required to boot the system, but you need it for regular operation, or otherwise it would overheat. Continuing on with the theme of 2 of everything, there is 2 power supplies. This is for redundancy. These are 80 plus gold, 1000 watt. So this thing draws a lot of power. But I don't think that both of them are used at the same time. I believe only one of them is used at the same time. Or is used at once. Because in case one of them fails, your system will not go offline. And you'll still have another power supply. Ideally, you want these to be on 2 separate circuits as well. 1 because of power draw, and 2 because of redundancy. So if one breaker on that box there goes off, then you'll still have power to the server. You need to turn off 2 breakers in order to kill it. But nothing in my server rack is ideal. The whole thing is made out of wood, encased in wood. So if there's ever going to be an electrical fire, it'll be extra spicy. Let's put this thing back together. Oh, I should show the ports on the back. We've got, so this light here, there's a button on the front that turns on this light. In a big data center, when you need to take a server offline for maintenance, and there's a bunch of them stacked up on top of each other, it can be hard to identify which server is which. And so you press that button, turns on this light, you can walk around to the back of the rack and see, oh, this is the server I need to work on. Serial. This is a relic of a bygone era, at least in personal computing. In the enterprise world, serial is still very common on network switches and servers such as this one. It's used for configuring low-level stuff, I think, like the BIOS and stuff like that, like resetting BIOS passwords is a big one. I've never used it, but I know it can be useful. if you need it. There's 3 Ethernet ports on the back here. 2 of them are only actually used by the operating system. One of these is actually for the BIOS. It's labeled MGMT here. And that is actually directly connected to a chip on the motherboard that acts as a web server, completely separate from the rest of the system. That's so you can power on and off the system remotely, as well as view like fan speeds and diagnostic information. Like, for example, if one of your hard drives or fans or things of memory or your expansion card or your power supply were to fail, then it would tell you on that web interface which one it is and that it's failed, which is extremely useful for data centers where you have hundreds or thousands of servers that you can't always physically be in front of. There's 2 network ports that can be used by the operating system itself. That's for 2 reasons. One is redundancy. Ideally, again, you'd have those put on different switches, but I don't do that. I think it's in case one of the network interfaces fail, you still have a connection to the internet or to your local network. But in some cases, this is used as what is called duplex. It's basically RAID, but for networking. You take 2 cables and you stripe the data connection across both of them, so you have double the speed. You need special networking equipment for that, which I don't have, so I don't use that. I do plug both of them in, though. Again, it's set up for redundancy. 4 USB 2.0 ports here. This is the Unraid installation. Fun fact about Unraid, that's the operating system, by the way. It just runs off of a USB and loads itself into RAM instead of taking up space on a hard drive. That's because Unraid is a NAS, Network Attached Storage operating system, and so it wanted, I guess the developers wanted all of the usable space on the hard drive to be usable for data, and I guess also be separate from the data. In case you want to add or remove disks, you can do that at will, because the operating system is on this and in your memory. And finally, back here is a VGA port. Again, a relic of a bygone era in personal computing, but still widely used in enterprise markets because it's just easy. Analog is, I guess I wouldn't say it's more reliable than newer technologies like DisplayPort and HDMI, but a lot of, I guess, KVMs and like keyboard and mouse and display blades that you would have in a rack use VGA, and I think in terms of the protocol that it uses, it's just easier to implement than something like HDMI or DisplayPort or even DVI for that matter. On the front there's 2 USB ports as well. This thing weighs about 50 pounds with the hard drive inside, with the hard drives inside. I had to carry it on my shoulder to put it down here. It was quite the task. Go on. There we go. Alright. I'm going to film myself putting that back up there. I'm going to be smart this time and actually take the hard drives out, because that is a major factor contributing to the weight of this thing. Alright, hard drive time. A bit of a pain to get in because the guy that sold this to me did not include the screws for the hard drive brackets, and so it's kind of a friction fit. Just kind of have to push it in there. Reconnecting cables is a pain because you can't see what you're doing. You just have to feel around. Alright, now that I got everything connected. Power on. This thing sounds like a jet engine. These lights on the front here indicate network connectivity. This lights up if you have an issue, and one of these lights up telling you what the issue is. So if there's power supply failure, it's overheating, fan failure, memory failure, CPU failure. That's in addition to the integrated network. They call it ILO, integrated lights out. So if the lights go out, then you can still look at stuff. They also call it BMC, which I think stands for Back-End Management Console. Same sort of thing. If you're curious, it's a Lenovo ThinkServer RD340. Got it for about, I think, $350 all told, before hard drives. Since this is a headless setup, headless means there's no keyboard, mouse, or monitor connected to it. I use this ThinkPad for all the management as well as needle surface. I can't really tell when it's booted up, so I just have to keep refreshing the it's not turning on, the battery must have died. It's fine. Open up this guy. And it's booted up. Rot. Not leaking any passwords today. So you can see all the 3 hard drives are there. There's the USB that runs off of. Start the array. Hard drives will spin up, and all the Discord bots and everything else will come back online. Alright. It's actually really cool what you can see. You can actually see the temperatures of the hard drives. As you can see, those fans are doing a lot of work, keeping it down at 20. This is also the basement, and we have central air, so it's very cool down here. And that's about it. Thank you for watching.